Listen up, I'm about to get dope. It ain't nothing but some shit I wrote.
What's going on? It's time for another episode of Too Hard for the Radio. Transmitting from the future-free state of Greater Idaho, I am the one-armed madman. And from the Badlands of southern Montana, it's Nolan 5150. Alright, let's hit it. That was better. I did a nice record job on that one. I had to figure out how to cut music together, but I think I got it. I'm hoping this is going to last for at least a little while. We got a copyright strike on YouTube. Not strike, we got a copyright claim on YouTube. And I did a little bit of investigating on this. There's no, Mac Dre official YouTube channel. There's no Romp Records, none of that shit. It's just all random people having his songs on random channels. So I don't think anybody claimed it. I think the AI just popped up and said, oh, this is someone's music. Because if someone was going to claim it, you'd have to have the right to claim it. And if this is just some random asshole putting it on their YouTube channel, they've got no right to claim it. So I say we fucking roll.
Yeah, at least keep going till somebody says we can't no more.
I think what'll happen is, since we've got a bunch of liberal friends in California, especially me in San Francisco, somebody will click on this at one point and say, oh, let's see what Nick and Nolan are up to. And they'll listen to us for 5 minutes and go, oh, these fucking guys.
Yeah.
And they'll hit the copyright button or something. That's what these fucking liberals do. They just, use weasel tactics. It's like, they have no problem having, drag queen story time in a bar in the middle of the street in the middle of the afternoon with little kids. But if you say fuck on the radio, they're all over you with the FCC filings and all that type of shit. It's really crazy.
Nope. That's not allowed. You can't say fuck.
Yeah, no fucks here. Only in the bar with the naked man with tits.
Mm-hmm. That's actually one thing I've been thinking about with the whole, all the whole Christian community and Catholic, whatever you are, the religious community and everybody. They're all up in arms over the indoctrination of children with the LGBTQ community, all that stuff. But it's a little hypocritical that they don't mind. They don't even think twice about indoctrinating children's minds with their Catholicism, with their Christianity, with their Mormonism, whatever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? I'm all for not indoctrinating children's minds at all. Just let them develop.
Yeah. It's Marxism, cultural Marxism. They don't want religion, anything that they can, other. Right now it's, back in Russia, in the Soviet Union, it was the bourgeoisie and these other deals. Now it's just LGBT stuff. They're, whatever they can attack, they'll attack. Yeah. So last week we got into motorcycles a little bit. Quite a bit, actually. And I was talking about how this radical environmentalism by these same fucking people, the same people that are screaming about drag queen story time are also screaming about green energy and cutting off fossil fuels and all this shit. So as a kid, this stuff was so out in the open that even for me as a little kid, I could recognize this as bullshit. Just a straight up power play. You're the little guy, I'm the big guy. I'm going to tell you what you can and can't do with your weekends.
Yeah.
So
that was one thing. You're always like, well, okay, you're saying I can't, but why can't I? And if you can't explain it, make it make sense, then I'm going to call bullshit.
Well, I figured what we would do is get into their reasonings behind this and how they were able to weasel their way in. So we're going to start with this article. For motocross riders, you're going to hear me right now, and even you, Nolan, you might hear me and go, this is a little wonky. But this is for people who have no idea, anything about dirt bikes or the industry or what's been happening for the last 30, 40 years with environmentalism. So just let this roll a little bit, and it's going to come around, and you're going to, I think, see some patterns, and hopefully some people that don't know anything about motocross can see why this has been such a problem for the my entire life, essentially. This has shaped my life. So let's start off with the bike that changed it all, the YZM 400. So this is a article in, I don't remember what it is, First Wrap. It's a fast wrap. It's a dirt bike magazine. This is a callback to a dirt bike article a few years ago. So it says, move this closer because I'm old and I can't see now. Back in the 2015s, motocross looked and sounded very different. In the late 2016, Yamaha made an announcement that changed everything. That was when the news came out that the Yamaha would be using its one-time exemption to the production rule in order to develop a new four-stroke motocross bike in the course of the 2017 racing season. This first look that the world got of the YZM race bike was on the cover of the February 2017 issue of Dirt Bike. Here are 3 stories that appeared over the next few years in Dirt Bike that together tell the story of the coming of the four-stroke era. First, let's look at the story from February 2017 when the YZM was first revealed. All right, so we're going to get into this a little bit later, but let's just let this article play out a little bit before we start getting into the nitty-gritty of this. The bike you see in front of you is the future of motocross. In 2017, Yamaha has announced that it will campaign a four-stroke in the U.S. National MX Series. The AMA has made a special exemption to the production rule so that Yamaha can develop what the company fully believes will be the motocross bike of the future. Why? That's easy to figure out. Unless you're time warp from the 40s, you know that two-stroke engine is a living on borrowed time. There are factions in the government that insist that two strokes as we know them today must go away. That is too dirty and too economically unfriendly. In Los Angeles, there are laws that prohibit the sale and use of two-stroke leaf blowers and lawnmowers, and California is already seeing the first steps in regulating two-stroke off-road bikes. At this point, competition bikes are unaffected by the new regs, but you don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure out that the environmental regulations aren't getting any looser. In the next few years, they will only get more and more strict, eventually affecting motocross. This sounds like any environmental argument you would hear. This, you could read this in a book. Did you pick up the problem with this article?
No.
I swapped all the dates. I swapped all the dates. This was a 1997 article, not a 2017 article.
Oh, okay. I actually looked it up and I was following along reading it.
Yeah. So you saw that I had the dates crossed out. But this is something you could read in any, like, not in the New York Times, but like excerpts of this type of talk are all over the place today. And you can see that they have had an agenda for a long time once we get into this a little bit further. So I think it was interesting how they attacked this issue. And I think that we'll start to see a little bit of a pattern in it. So here, let's go a little bit on further with this article. Yamaha figures we have all the warning we need. That's why the YZM 400 was built. Doug Henry will race it for the first time in Gainesville 250 National MX against 250s. Although so far only Europe will have a racing program technically. Okay, blah 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 blah. So this is just talking about what they're going to be doing with the bike, but the actual interesting part is the bike. So I'm going to skip down to another article here about the bike itself and try to think about how this type of talk and how this type of agenda is being used in contemporary times. Think cars, you know?
I already have an example.
You already have an example. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
There is no, okay, so this is describing this bike. There was no works bike before or since that changed the history of motocross like Doug Henry's 1997 YZM 400, the only true works bike in the AMA since the inception of the production rule. The production rule changed everything. Back in the day, you could have a $100,000 bike. You could do anything to your bike. Even in Europe today, they still have a little bit different rules. They're allowed to tweak the frames and change the transmissions a little bit. That's why a lot of times guys have problems coming over here in the beginning from Europe because they've got to ride a completely different bike you know,
That
and
makes sense.
the tracks are also different. But I mean, if you're used to riding a bike that you can customize the frame on, you're going back to something that's going to be really rigid, and you're going to feel like you're riding a board for a long time. It's probably a real pain in the ass to get fixed. All right.
Literally.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And bikes are strange, and like, so you can have a bike tuned and you can be hammering laps and feel great on the bike. If you take a week off or get hurt and you come back and you're not able to hammer at that same speed, the bike feels really fucking stiff. It feels like you're riding somebody else's bike. This type of stuff doesn't really happen until you get into the upper ranges of motocross, because typically lower level riders can't feel these types of differences. But when you're talking about super tight tolerances, you can really feel it. I'm sure you've experienced this on street bikes as well.
Yeah, you got to be able to ride it to what it's tuned for. You know, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean,
if you're not hammering it hard enough, then your suspension isn't going to be working correct.
Yeah, you run 2 clickers up on your bike and come into a corner the same speed as 2 clickers down, you're going to be in a whole different world. So let's finish up on this bike. The production rule was put into effect in 1986 to protect privateers from having to battle $100,000 engineering marvels. But Yamaha somehow worked out an exemption and worked within the highly lopsided double displacement rule with the AMA to further 4-stroke development. I'm not going to turn this into a 2-stroke versus 4-stroke debate, but this bike was a 100% prototype machine and went against every production rule in the book. Because of these freedoms, Doug Henry's YZM 400 was the trickiest handmade machine to ever shred a motocross or supercross track. So this was a trick fucking bike. And when I first saw him go out and race on this, I was a little kid, but I remember when this happened. I had that dirt bike issue. I wish to hell I still had it and kept that type of stuff. Al might have them still, but I was under the impression that this bike was of lesser quality to the 2 strokes that they were battling with. And I think this is something that I stitched together later on after he'd done it. I figured, well, it had to have been just his ability that was made him capable of riding this shitty bike against all these trick 2 strokes. But not the case. They were able to put everything into this bike. And this was because of environmentalism. Straight up. There was no reason to do this aside from environmentalism. And like they said, the AMA they knew the writing on the wall. They knew what was going to happen and what would happen if they allowed 2 strokes to continue to be the reigning champs. They were going to lose.
Yep.
So they said, do whatever the fuck you want. So now, a couple years later, people are starting to buy these things, and these are not the bikes that Doug Henry rode. As you can see from this article, the stuff that came out of the production line a couple years later were fucking garbage. The 2006 4-stroke that I had was a complete piece of shit. It just was over-engineered, and it didn't produce well. It was just a piece of shit. But this was kind of like a psyop in a lot of ways, where they're all over the magazines. People are winning on them and racing. You got to have this bike. And in reality, the reason people were winning on them is because it was unfair. They were able to put a 450 in when, if you wanted to be fair, it should have been a 350 or a 400 at the most. But it was just an unfair advantage, straight up. It was nothing to do, like he said, this wasn't a 4-stroke or 2-stroke debate. It was unfair, just straight up unfair. Yeah. It's like racing an Indy car versus a stock car. There's just going to get annihilated. And, these fucking environmentalists, they're able to push policy. I mean, Yamaha is made in Japan. So a California policy is able to dictate what a company in Japan produces. How fucking wild is that?
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, it's kind of like the U.S. Department of Transportation wouldn't allow the late 80s, early 90s Toyota Hilux diesel pickups into the country because they knew it would completely obliterate the mid-size pickup market in the States. Why do you think they're only over in the desert?
Yeah, no shit. Our military uses them over there all the time. That's an interesting point.
But they wouldn't let them in the States. I actually contacted a company in Canada that imports what's the word? It gets import vehicles from overseas and brings them into the States. And I specifically asked them about the crew cab, early 90s diesel Toyota pickup, and they laughed at me. They're like, no way, it's not going to happen.
So do you remember, I was going to get into this later, but this is a great segue to it. Do you remember when I was living in Southern California and I was living with Switchblade and me and him started that biodiesel company?
Yep.
We were going on this playbook. I remember pulling this shit up and schooling him on, look, this is how they were able to do it in motocross. They changed an entire industry, and the way they were able to do it was by going fast. It wasn't by convincing people that this was going to be better or that this was going to, help the environment. Nobody gave a shit about that. It was all about, can this thing perform? And they could. Mm-hmm. And that is why people are still riding them today. Two Strokes has made a hell of a comeback. All over, the United States, we don't have these strict rules everywhere. So KTM, thank God for KTM, they kept production up. But if it wasn't for them, I mean, Kawasaki doesn't make a 125 anymore. How crazy is that?
That's wild.
I think the baddest fucking bike ever built was Mike Brown's Pro Circuit. I think it was like a 2002 Pro Circuit KX 125. It had a number 1 plate on it. I remember him hanging off the back of that thing, running up the hills, and it just lean popping, giving every ounce that it had. It was just, and the way that it looked, it had this black and orange and yellow. Man, maybe I'll put it as the thumbnail for this episode on YouTube so people can see how fucking badass looking of a bike this was. I remember seeing a magazine in the store a while back that had one on the cover and somebody rebuilt it. And it's like, yeah, man, people know what's up. People know what the badass bikes are,
Yeah. There's something like we were talking about a little bit last episode, the difference between the 4-stroke and the 2-stroke race them anyway. But if you got that style and you can keep that 2-stroke pinned, you're faster.
Yeah, I remember.
And that's, I mean, I don't know why they tried to, they put this economical, ecological banner over getting rid of them, but they're just basically slowing people down.
Yeah. I was at I remember a race in Turlock, Oakfield Raceway, one of the best tracks in California. There was this guy named Eric McCrumman that raced there, and he was a local pro, and he was a fucking savage. And there was a rain, like a mud weekend, and he had just gotten all these brand new 250F, Kawasaki 250Fs, and he had a decent ride. It was like Thousand Oaks Kawasaki back then. It was like the amateur version of Pro Circuit Kawasaki. So he had badass bikes. And this rain weekend, I'm talking like 6 inches of water on the track. Is a sand track. It just turns into a fucking mess. And he didn't want to race his 4-strokes. And by that time, like, 2-strokes had kind of gone away. And everybody all the good riders, at least at the track, had 4-strokes. So you didn't really see anybody screaming 125s very often. And he just decided, fuck it, I'm not going to destroy my 4-strokes on this rain race. And he busted out the 125. And man, talk about just badass. Screaming across these puddles, doing all the jumps on this thing in against 450s, and he whole shot at everybody. He was a good rider. I think he ended up getting he won a heat race at one point, a Supercross, and then he also had like a top 3 at Hangtown one year where he just crushed it, but kept getting hurt. I think he broke his back or something like that, and just they go.
Yeah.
I thought but I was, so with this biodiesel company, that was our plan. Like, the plan was, we're going to bring this to a rate. We're going to build a vehicle. We're going to bring it to a race, and we are going to race all on our own fuel. And the plan was to take this thing to Baja and do the Baja 1000. I was the only guy that had any racing experience. We brought in a couple money guys, and one of our buddies' dad was like he was some sort of engineer, like fucking, biological engineer or something like that. So he knew he knew how to make bombs. He knew how to make fucking liquor. He knew how to make everything. So we brought this guy in, and we actually had like a board meeting at one of the UCs in Southern California. Like, we were taking this really seriously. Like, this guy put like $1 million into it right away. This kid that we had brought in, his dad had wrote some code in the 70s that was used to make ATM machines. So this guy was fucking loaded. He owned a house on Canyon Lake. He had a picture of him and George Bush on the wall. Like, real fucking money,
So did he go to an island in the Caribbean?
Maybe. There was probably a big dungeon under the bottom of that fucking house. So we brought these guys in, and they wanted to push too fucking fast, too hard. So we got this vehicle. We got a badass vehicle. We got a side-by-side, like an ATV side-by-side from John Deere. It was a John Deere Gator. So it was a diesel right off the bat. It had this three-cylinder.
I remember that.
Yeah. So we took it out, and I trashed it for an entire day out in the hills. And I came back and I was like, all right, we have to rebuild everything on this. I mean, every piece of this thing needs to be rebuilt. And they were like, all in. Yep, we got to do it. So we brought in this guy. He was a tractor pull guy. He'd done tractor pulls his whole life. And he dug into this thing. And me and him were tight. We were texting all the time. This is what it needs to be. This is how wide we should make it. I was doing all this fucking research. And we put together a list of parts. And they were able to get a lot of shit done. But some of the shit just had to be made custom. And it was going to take too fucking long. And there was just no fucking way we were going to get it to Baja 1000. And even though this thing wasn't fully built, they're like, we'll just take it down there and run. We'll see how far we get. And I'm like, no fucking way, man. They didn't have they didn't have a motorhome. They didn't have a pre-running truck. So they weren't even going to pre-run. People go down there for a month beforehand. They pre-run. They've got all these vehicles. I mean, this costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to race Baja. And
you gotta have a support vehicle.
Yeah, dude, more than one support vehicle, because you have to have one that'll be on the roads taking the drivers and navigators from A to B, and then you have to have one that can pre-run next to the vehicle, and then you probably should have another backup pre-runner. So every time you break down, these pre-runners got to get out to where they are, and I mean it's a serious fucking race. So they brought it down there year one, and my plan was, I said, we go to the Baja 100, 300, 500, then we do the 1,000. It's a year and a half away. That's plenty of time, and we'll be able to do it. We'll actually be able to do it. And then we started running into all kinds of fucking problems. Making biodiesel's a fucking bitch. How are you going to get it all down there? Are you going to have a tanker with you? So then it was like, okay, now we're going to do an additive. So that's already fucking stupid. But it ended up that these guys were just idiots. They were going to go down and make fucking fools of themselves. I knew they were going to make fools of themselves, and I backed out. And they brought in another guy to drive, and he backed out on the line. The guy that built the cage pulled his stickers off of the vehicle on the line. Like, it was a big fucking thing. Yeah, like, it was horribly embarrassing for these people, because you know how the line is. There's thousands of people there. There's all the sponsors. There's cameras for documentaries. And they had gotten a lot of buzz. They had gotten John Deere to, like, give us the vehicle for free, and they had sponsored us. And, there was a lot of buzz behind this. But it ended up, me and Switchblade both fucking bounced out on the company that we fucking created, and it just went to shit. And, looking back on it now, there was no fucking way this was ever going to be successful. This stuff is fucking stupid.
You're talking just the biodiesel
Yes,
in
it's
general.
ridiculous. If I'd had
Yeah,
known what I
pipe
know of
dream.
now, we would have never done it. I mean, you're literally
Yeah.
burning food. You
Yep.
can't get enough old oil, like the pie in the sky utopian green fantasy is, oh, you go around to all of the fast food places and you pick up their oil and then you clean it and then you turn it into biodiesel. And it's like, man, this is a fucking nightmare. And then you run into things like, oh yeah, McDonald's, they're corporate, they only pump to one company. There's no, we couldn't sell it to you if we wanted to. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, we'll take it for free. Now we're going to keep paying this other corporation to do it because that's how we have to do business.
The liability.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of realistic for like that one hippie dude driving around in a Volkswagen bus that converted to biodiesel, and
yeah,
maybe he can run around to enough small time restaurants and get oil and do it like that. But on a large scale, there's no way.
I had an idea for a book a while back about like the aftermath of a green, power grid being instituted and just people fucking, basically a road warrior society ran by San Francisco in Northern California. And I was trying to put together this, story from, this community that survived, go up to Lake Sonoma where I'm from and, build a fucking hydroelectric plant, grow a bunch of marijuana, and then San Francisco just keeps trying to encroach and keeps trying to fuck with them. And then how would you fight back against this? And you just start looking at the nuts and bolts and put a map down and like, okay, how would you get there? Biodiesel, electric, like it just, all of the nuts and bolts just all fall apart every time. And the technological society in San Francisco wins every fucking time. There's just, this stuff is ridiculous. It's not meant to serve a bunch of people.
Yeah.
This is meant for the 500.
Crazy.
This is meant for the 500 million that are supposed to be left after this is all over.
Yeah. Exactly. The chosen few.
Yeah. No shit.
I had a crazy dream last night. It was like some, not quite post-apocalyptic, but it was like futuristic, fallen society, almost just like a futuristic sci-fi Wild West vibe.
Nice.
It was weird.
That's my favorite type of show. Sci-fi westerns, man.
It
like
sounds,
Firefly.
It sounds a lot like you. Yeah.
When I dream, I still have my hand.
That's crazy.
That's weird, right?
That's crazy. Yeah. That would trip me out.
It's fucked up. Wow. And like, I always have dreams of like, because I'm a drug addict, I always have dreams of like, even though I'm not like fucking clean anymore, I take pain pills all the time, but I still have these dreams where like I'm sober and I find a bag of Oxycontins at a party or some shit like that. And I'm like putting them in my pocket and I'm trying to go find a place to do them. And then I just never find the place. And I always wake up before I do them.
That's
all
crazy,
right.
man.
Well, let's dig back in. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was saying with your hand, you found the bag and you picked it up with your hand.
Yes, no shit. And then I went and jerked off with it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna do. Like, do you touch yourself?
I went on Kill Tony during the pandemic. It was one of those deals where trying to have some fun. And and I don't know why I didn't think of this, but the first fucking question he asked me was, "Do I jerk off with my hand?" And I didn't have a good answer for him. I was just like, I was like, no, I don't want to kink the hose. This thing has a mind of its own.
If it's hooked up to Wi-Fi, then you never know what it's gonna do.
My spinal cord stimulator, I control it with an iPod, which I'm filming this podcast on right now. Talk about multitasking.
Mm-hmm.
So these things, I have to like call the guy to go and meet with him so he can change the programming. Like I can turn it up and down, but he has to change the programming. So I asked him one time, I was like, why can't you just let me do this? And he was like, we used to let people do this, but some kid got a hold of his grandma's after she was beating the shit out of him, and he tied her up and tortured her with it. I was like, oh my God. So he's like, yeah, so you probably, if you got somebody that, doesn't like you, keep this thing off of Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. You could be punching yourself.
Oh no, it would literally be like the way it's turned up. Have you ever used a tens machine? How it like you put those
Yeah.
things on and it yang yang yang. Well, this is one of those, but inside of you. So it would literally be like tensing up my entire fucking body. He's given me like
Oh, wow.
more access than most people have. If you turned mine up all the way, it would be absolute torture for sure. I would be like screaming and agony, which is
Oh,
probably
man,
something
that's
I
wild.
shouldn't say publicly. All right, let's get back to the fucking dirt bikes. Let's see. All right.
Yep.
We're going to learn a little bit more about who's behind this shit and what they're up to next. Because as we know, they're never happy. They're always going to keep pushing. So let me grab a drink real quick. These fucking teeth. They give me horrible fucking cotton mouth. All right. Back in the 1970s, two-stroke road bikes like the original Kawasaki H2 were making all the other bikes look like bicycles. Coincidentally, that was around the time people began to care about words like smog and emissions in unprecedented ways. Yeah, I bet you, fuck that. The fact that you could watch pollutants exiting the tailpipe of a two-stroke vehicle didn't sit well with the burgeoning environmental movement, and the idea of smoke visibly exiting the exhaust was thought to be directly tied to decades of thick smog in cities like Los Angeles. So now we get to the fucking crux of the issue. People in Los Angeles don't want you to ride dirt bikes because it has an effect on their air quality.
Yeah,
Well,
that's the problem.
That's the problem. We're the problem. Not your fucking
Uh-huh.
cars. Not all these fucking cars that you're driving every goddamn place. Well, the idea...
Not the traffic.
And the closest place to ride a fucking dirt bike in to Los Angeles is like 80 miles away. So
Yeah.
they could have just said, we're going to outlaw road two-stroke motorcycles in the city of Los Angeles.
Yeah,
That would have been fine.
That would have made sense.
But
yeah.
instead, you're coming after me. What year did they say this was? Let's keep going into this, and then we'll get back into this. While that idea wasn't entirely wrong, anyone in 2018 will take one look at those pictures and realize that there's no way those little two-stroke engines were responsible for all that smog. The simple fact is that four-stroke emissions were horrid as well. Engine technology had to improve, and it had to happen fast. The use of valves, cams, and timing systems in four strokes made it relatively easy to fine-tune them for better emissions, and very fucking hard to work on. Amid increasingly strict EPA regulations of the 1970s and 80s, it was more economically viable for manufacturers to invest in four-stroke engines than to spend years and millions researching how to make two-stroke engines achieve the same result. So here again, people in Los Angeles dictating what Kawasaki, Yamaha, Suzuki, and Honda build in Japan. What people ride in Europe. I mean, this is crazy. One of the points that I wanted to make about this, is, and you know this very well, is Southern California leads culture in this entire fucking planet. When the first time I went down to Southern California, I think it was you that introduced me to Facebook. Facebook had just gotten around down there. I had no fucking clue what it was. I think I was 17, so this is 2003. And hey, here's this Facebook thing. Whatever.
Nope.
I wasn't. It was never my fucking thing.
It was MySpace.
MySpace, not Facebook. MySpace. God damn it. Yeah, it was fucking MySpace. So I go home to Northern California. Nobody had heard anything about this. They go, what the fuck is this? This is stupid. Nobody fucking wants this shit. What is it? We didn't even know what it was. And I think it was actually...
How you pull pussy.
To this day, I don't think I've ever gotten pussy off of fucking social media. Hopefully we can change that. But no, I mean, within like 6 months, though, everybody in school had it. Everybody in school had it. And this happens with clothes. It happens with music. It happens with politics. It happens with environmental regulations. These things start and a lot of times in Southern California and Washington, D.C. I wouldn't be surprised if most of this emissions bullshit started in California, then worked its way to D.C., then disseminated down to the rest of us.
For sure. I've always felt it was like, I'm sure DC's definitely in there. DC's probably pulling the strings more than we know, but I always felt like it was like LA, New York. And pretty much every time back in those days when I would go between Southern California back to Montana, Montana always seemed to be, like you said, like 6 months behind everything. Like you come out here and then everything on the radio is what's, 6 months old from Southern California that nobody listens to anymore.
Yeah. And I don't think that people that have never lived in California can really appreciate how major this happened. Like, we're not joking here. I would imagine that like Northern California, where I was from, was 6 months behind. Montana's 9 months to 12 months behind, and it just keeps, going a little bit further. North Dakota gets it a year later. You know what I mean?
For sure. What's crazy now is with social media and everything, like people's lives are on their cell phones now. So I think it's been kind of a bit of a wave of people buying into a bunch more bullshit because there's so much more access to opinions and videos and things like that. But it seems like some people are starting to kind of like get wise to the bullshit that they're trying to get force fed.
I think that it's a problem of Western thinking. I think that in Western society, we are conditioned to think that the rest of the world lives like we do. I think that most of the time when people talk about this green, we need to go green, they have no idea what that actually means or the implications that would have on the rest of the world. 2/3 of the world still burns poop and wood for heat. I mean, this is... billions of people burn shit to eat every night, and we're talking about windmills. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah. It is.
I've been homeless.
First world problems.
I've been homeless. It fucking sucks. I've been homeless in the first world. I had a cell phone when I was homeless, but dude, and I lived in Maui, so homeless in quotes, but I didn't have a house. I lived on the fucking beach. I lived in the bushes. I slept on tennis courts when it was raining because I basically did too many drugs and got kicked out of every place that I lived in there. But being homeless sucks, man. I got scabies. I got a staph infection. I got this fucking cut on my leg when I was doing some roof work, and then one night I bumped it on the side of a rock, and within like 2 days it was completely fucking swollen. And I had to go to the hospital, and then I had scabies, so all the scabies turned into like pus-filled fucking bumps. So, dude, it was fucking rough. I weighed like 150 pounds, 140 pounds. You wouldn't recognize me if you saw me. I broke my elbow on a skateboard running from some dude that looked like Jocko Willink after I tried to jack his fucking fanny pack on the beach. Have you ever ran from somebody before that you thought was going to fucking kill you?
Oh, yeah.
Dude, it was terrifying. I was on a skateboard, and I got tired, and this guy was still just coming at me. I was like a half a mile away, and I'm tired on a skateboard. I'm like, if this guy catches me, he's going to fucking kill me. And some people like got in front of me and tried to stop me, and I crashed, landed right on my elbow. I ran, I got up, I grabbed my skateboard, I ran, I went to this fence that I knew led to this apartment complex, and there was this apartment there that a guy that I worked with had rented, and he moved out, and me and this other guy snuck in there and sold all the furniture on Craigslist. We sold the fucking refrigerator, we sold the washer and dryer, we sold everything. So this apartment was fucking open. So I jumped over this fence, broke the window, snuck into this apartment, and stayed there for like a half an hour. Within like 10 minutes, my elbow was just killing me. I ended up having to go to the hospital a couple days later, and I had a broken elbow. The point is, I lived with no energy. I had to charge my phone somewhere. I had to go to work to watch the World Series, and I had to pretend that I was, a functioning member of society.
Yeah.
I think it's like 60% of the world or something like that, 2 billion people use less energy than one of our washers and dryers. And remember from Mayor Pete's big gay infrastructure video last week, one car equals 40 washers and dryers. So we got people living all over the planet that can't have one washer and dryer, and we want to have 40 of them parked in our driveway. It's fucking wild.
Yeah.
Somebody asked Thomas Massey the other day, well, why can't they just charge them at night? And he's like, the solar panels aren't running at night, dipshit. He was on Tucker the other night, and he goes, this stuff is set by political science, not engineering. That's why I'm a political science denier. Did you hear Tucker renamed monkeypox schlong COVID?
No, I didn't hear that.
Schlong COVID. That's fucking great. All right. Back to these fucking psychopaths. Where am I? Amid increasingly strict EPA regulations of the 70s and 80s, it was more economic. Oh, we already got to that. They're setting policy. They're able, a couple of people in Southern California are able to control what businesses on the other side of the world build and sell. All right. Soon, major brands began choosing 4-stroke engines for motorcycles and passenger cars around the world. So at some point, I didn't do too much research into this. There was a lot of 2-stroke cars around the planet, but, California. And by the mid-1990s, road-going 2-strokes had all but died out. Despite the higher initial cost of 4-stroke motorcycles and the difficult to work on, the public and their lawmakers, many of whom didn't ride at all, I would have said none, because I would imagine anybody who rides would have nothing to do with this bullshit, embrace this technology because in their eyes, those noisy, which has nothing to do with fucking smog, smoke belching 2-strokes were the reason they could not see the Hollywood sign on their way to work every morning. Not that their 8.2 liter Cadillacs or their 5.7 liter Corvettes had anything to do with it. Hulking V8s, which were so inefficient, they made less than 200 horsepower each. So, again, this is not in my backyard. They call this NIMBY in energy. So this happens with wind energy too. Wind energy has the Starbucks rule. If you're within 30 miles from a Starbucks, you can't build wind. I think I brought that up last week. So this is NIMBY people. They want this shit, but they don't want any part of it. They don't want to see it. They don't want to hear it. They just, want you to do it.
That's what the one thing that keeps standing out is the noise. It sounds like it was more about a noise complaint. And then, like you said, then why don't you just ban them in city limits and let everybody else live their lives?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is not something I would have been okay with, but that would have been an easy compromise for something like this, especially since this was a problem from the 70s. And by the time they actually got their shit together and put this shit into effect, the smog had cleared up. And the bikes were already the 2-strokes were already gone. So let's get into the people who are actually behind this. So these people are called, you're going to love this, CARB. They love to just rub our faces in it. You know what I mean? It's like the Hadron Collider when they name it Satan or some shit like that. They just really want to rub your fucking face in it. What are we against? CARBuretors. What are we going to call ourselves? CARB. They just love to rub your fucking face in it. So here is CARB, California Air Resources Board. In 1994,
I knew that.
Huh? You did?
Oh, I was saying I knew that. I've because like if you're doing an engine swap, on a vehicle in California, you have to get it CARB certified.
Yep. So these people are the enemy. Make no mistake. This is the enemy. All right. So okay, here we go. So this is where it gets good. In 1994, CARB began regulating off-highway recreational vehicles. 94, the smog was gone. This was a problem for the 70s. There was no two-stroke bikes on the road by then. 80 miles is the closest place you can ride a dirt bike. This is having an effect on me in Northern California, in Ukiah, up on Cow Mountain, 60 miles away from the nearest town. Nobody can hear you. Nobody can see you. There's nothing to light on fire. They used to make us stick these fucking exhaust pipes. I had one on my 80 that it was just a spark arrestor. And what it is it's a little fucking can with a screen on the end of it and a hose clamp. You hose clamp it to the end, and apparently it keeps you from starting a fire, which has never fucking happened in the history of dirt bike riding. It was wild. And they used to have rangers would be on bikes or four-wheelers out on Cow Mountain, and they'd drive around with a stick. And they would pull you over, and they would stick a stick down your exhaust pipe. And if it went all the way through, you were in trouble. If it stopped, then you were fine. I mean, what kind of asshole takes that fucking job, too? You know this is bullshit. You've worked at this park, but you're still going to do it. And, you know, if you're, say you come up on two people, me and my dad, we're riding, there's nobody around. You see he's on a bike that has to have a spark arrestor, and we take off running, because that's what we would do every fucking time we saw these people. We would just take off, because even when I was on an 80, there's not a bike cop in the world that could keep up with me on a dirt bike. I would put money on that. And these people they could just let you go. Whatever, missed them. I'll get them next time. I've had these people sit at your truck for 4 or 5 hours and wait for you to come back. And you get back to your truck to go home, and it's, I got it right. Yep, here's a ticket. You get enough tickets, you can't come back. You know, and this is in 94, I'm on an 80, and I'm a two-stroke 80. In 94, I'm 8. Well, I guess I wasn't on an 80 yet, so this is a few years later. But 12-year-old kid riding around in the mountains around nobody, unacceptable.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back into this. With the mission to reduce the air quality... Okay, off-road vehicles with the mission to reduce the air quality impact of this category. There isn't an air quality impact. OHVs primarily include off-highway motorcycles, all-terrain vehicles, utility terrain, blah, blah, blah. While the categorical name acknowledges a segment, blah, 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 blah. Spark-ignited OHVs are known source of tropospheric ozone precursors that contribute to the formation of smog. How about that? Smog. In the mountains, around nobody, no smog anywhere in Northern California. But again, you got to go. So what they did is they started instituting a sticker rule. And this is the most ridiculous fucking thing you could even imagine. So in 94, you could ride an XR400. You could ride a two-stroke 250. All this shit got a green sticker. After 94, two-strokes didn't get green stickers. You couldn't go riding in the summertime. And that was just it. And their answer was, well, get a four-stroke. You know, we've got all these brand new four-strokes. These companies have done a great job. You know, these bikes are amazing. Go buy a four-stroke. Everything will be fine. You're going to be good. So what happens? What do you think happens?
Everybody went and bought four-strokes.
And guess what happened to those four-strokes? They all got fucking red stickers a few years later. By the time I got my first 250F, it had a fucking red sticker on it. I never could go ride that goddamn thing in the hills unless I snuck out there. I mean, it literally, from 94 till my first 250F was a... You know what? I think my 125s obviously had a red sticker, but my first 250F I'm looking at right now was like a 2006. 10 years. All of that money, all of these companies spent in R&D to build these badass fucking bikes. Here's the answer. Everything's going to be fine in these people. Now, we're going to take those out too. It's fucking incredible, really.
Well, if you look at the topic long term, you see a pattern of the government just constantly trying to shut down whatever's the newest, latest, and greatest, while trying to push the next step. And then by the time that comes around, all of a sudden, nope, not those, but everybody's continuing to buy the new stuff. They outlaw the stuff you just bought. So then everybody's going to be out there breaking the law. Then they get a bunch of revenue from tickets and shit. People trying to have fun on the stuff they just bought to replace the old stuff that was perfectly fine, but the government said they had to buy new stuff.
Yep.
So
And at this
trying
point,
to keep everybody down.
and now as of 2022, they do not sell red sticker bikes in California anymore. They just got rid of them altogether.
Yeah. So they can really get you.
And this is like what's happening in the energy industry right now. They're taking away the existing product without a replacement. In their mind, they would say, "Oh, just buy an electric. Buy an electric." But there is no electric. They don't fucking exist yet. And they don't give a shit because it was never about the emissions. It was never about the smog. It was always about telling you, no, they just don't want us out there. They don't want us having fun. They don't want us having hobbies. They don't want us having recreational activities. They want us sitting in our houses, buying shit on Amazon.
Yeah. One thing I've kind of...
And not even our houses. They want us sitting in somebody else's house that we rent, excuse me, because you own nothing.
Yes,
you have nothing.
Yes.
And you'll be happy.
And you'll love it.
I love the happy one because it's like you'll be happy. Maybe. Whatever you consider happy to be.
You will own nothing and you will be happy.
See, Kyle. So I remember a while back. So like these bikes and these 4-stroke bikes, these aren't a fucking clunky 1970s 2-stroke that literally did belch smoke like fucking crazy. Like these are tight race engines. They're based on Indy cars. They have such tight tolerances. I mean, you got to use micrometers to get everything right. These things burn so hot and so clean. There's really no way. I mean, when you smell a brand new 4-stroke burning race gas, it smells like fucking candy. You can't convince me that something that burns and smells like candy can have this horrible fucking effect on the atmosphere.
There's nothing like the smell of VP in the morning.
Yeah. And so I think everybody can see here that they're coming after cars next. And CARB, they are not just a dirt bike deal. So first, you know what? Let's go. I remember this clip from a long time ago. You remember Top Gear?
Oh, yeah.
Top Gear was great. Jeremy Clarkson's the fucking man. So let's listen to this clip real quick. About this Porsche. I forgot what year. I forgot to put down what year this was. This was like 13 years. This is 2003, if I'm correct.
And it doesn't even harm the sky very much either.
It may have a flat 6 twin-turbo engine, but it only produces 300 carbon dioxides. That's 100 less than you get from the back of a Ferrari 430. And if you drive this car through a really polluted city, Los Angeles, Calcutta, Harrogate, something like that, the gas coming out of the exhaust pipes is less toxic than the air going into the engine. And I'm not joking, that's true.
How about that? That's in 2003. That Porsche was a fucking air cleaner, an air filter, essentially.
Yeah.
That's how
because
fucking... That's how clean and how tight these engines run. They're fucking... Dude, all of the exhaust gets ran through the engine. These things burn so fucking tight. You should just really clearly be able to see that this has nothing to do with engines. It has nothing to do with emissions. This has everything to do with power and control. And the electric car is the ultimate in power and control, especially if you don't own one, if you're using a ride share, because they can turn it off. They can tell you when you can and can't drive it. If there's too much demand and energy's down, or the wind isn't blowing, or maybe the clouds are going, well, you're not going to be able to go to work today. But luckily, we've got Zoom set up for you. And this doesn't have an effect on the Zoom class. You know, people like you, if they shut you down, you're fucked. You can't do anything. But the Zoom class is fine. Doesn't affect them a bit.
That was one thing that I heard recently, and it was talking about emissions and smog. And then I can't remember what it was or what, but they said that the catalytic converter was going to solve the smog issue. So why do we still have smog then?
These people put a catalytic converter in your mouth if you let them.
All it did was make the cars run less efficient, which then in turn did what? Made you have to buy more gas.
Yeah. It's fucking wild. I watched this science fiction short film a while back where they were like living in a world ravaged by climate change, and they had to wear like air masks to go outside, and they had to go and check in, and like the government doled out canisters, like this, you know, like a little CO2 canister type thing. So you had to go in and say, oh, I've done this work or I've done that, so I should get this much air. And then they'll go, oh yeah, no, it's cut down for the day, so you only get this much air. They would love that.
Wow. Yeah, that's what it's coming to.
Yeah.
With the food crisis and everything, they want lines of starving people willing to do whatever the government tells them. Yeah,
dead people,
true.
Subservient slaves. If you're smart enough to survive, you're going to be a slave.
Yeah, they don't give a fuck who survives.
No. Well, yeah, they
survive.
want them to survive. They don't fucking give a shit about us.
Yeah,
So these people aren't done. Here's an article from, when is this? September 19th. Oh no, that's from the picture. Whatever. Where am I? Okay, here we go. June 21st, 2022. U.S. regulators to propose new tougher vehicle emissions rules by March. The Environmental Protection Agency plans to propose new... Oh, jeez. I just hit a button. All right. The EPA plans to propose new, more stringent vehicle emissions rules through at least the 2030 model year by March, according to a regulatory update released on Tuesday. In December, the EPA finalized new light-duty tailpipe emission requirements through the 2026 model year. That revised then President Trump's rollback of car pollution cuts and will speed up a U.S. shift to more electric vehicles. The EPA said on Tuesday it plans to finalize by March 2024 the latest round of requirements covering at least 2027 through 2030. The agency also plans to produce and finalize new rules covering larger medium-duty vehicles in the same time frame. If expressed in miles per gallon requirements, the EPA rule finalized in December would result in a fleet-wide real-world average of 40 miles per gallon in 2026 versus 38 miles per gallon under the August proposal and 32 under Trump's. It's fucking crazy. Just a couple of percentage, or for a couple miles. Imagine the damage that this is going to do. This is like one of those deals where they'll tell you straight up, oh, the economy got destroyed because of COVID. Not because of what we did in response to COVID. You know, even John Hopkins has put out studies now that say that at best, the lockdowns did more harm than good.
Yeah.
At worst, they were catastrophic. And that's, from John Hopkins, the same people that cooked up this fucking bullshit, this idea to have these lockdowns. President Joe Biden wants 50% of all new vehicles sold in 2030 to be EV or plug-in hybrid models, but has not endorsed California's plan to phase out new gas-powered light-duty vehicles by 2035. Fucking crazy. One open question is in the next round of EPA rules is to what degree the new rules will push automakers towards building EVs. Push automakers towards building EVs. This is they know that if you leave it to the market, it's never going to happen. You have to push. It's the same, like, Four strokes would have came around. At some point, somebody would have built that YZM 400. It would have taken years. If they hadn't had that in and the ability to go and win with that bike in that way, and they would have had to play by the rules like everyone else, it would have taken years for them to build that bike. Yeah. The Detroit 3 automakers, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, parent, blah, 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 blah. Some ethanol producers in March sued to undo the 2026 rules, arguing they effectively mandate production and sale of electric cars rather than cars powered by internal combustion engines. Oh, you think? It's fucking wild. The last one that I've got, and then we'll end on this, is like we were saying with the Biox biodiesel company. You had to go fast. People don't give a shit about the environment. You have to make it something that they want. And for us, it was going fast. So here's a report from July 31st, 2022. Majority of U.S. EV buyers made the switch for the tech, not the planet. Imagine that. According to a new study commissioned by Polestar, 55% of U.S. EV owners bought their vehicles for reasons other than environmental benefits. Respondents instead pointed to in-vehicle technology, seamless connectivity, and informant systems as more important in their decision to buy an electric vehicle than powertrain and the consequent lack of emissions. So people don't fucking care. They're buying the Tesla because Elon Musk is a great fucking salesman, and he's going on the same YZM 400 model. That is the Tesla model. Yeah. They are building something that people like. They know people like to go fast, play video games on their phones, and they love to sleep while they drive. This has nothing to do with saving the planet. Even the people that are buying it don't give a shit about the planet. All they want to do is look fucking cool on Instagram. They want to be able to put it on their Tinder profile and say, EV, him, her, him, pronouns he, him, driving EV, thanks.
They want to increase that ESG score.
Yeah, I mean, they're preparing for the eventual personal ESGs that we're all going to be assigned by some fucking diversity department that the government's going to come up with next. They weren't able to push the Ministry of Truth, so they're going to come up with something next. I mean, it's not going to be long before I've got a 72 C10 sitting in my driveway right now, or in my garage. How much longer before that truck is no longer grandfathered in and able to drive without a smog test? How long before it gets a red sticker?
Basically, yeah.
And then you have to check for emissions days. Oh, we've got inversion in Boise today. Air's not great. This is a no red sticker day. And then how much longer before your F-150, your 2010 F-150 gets one? And then how much longer before your brand new diesel pickup gets one? And then eventually the EVs, they're essentially red sticker vehicles. Because somebody else can literally decide when and where you drive.
Yeah, it's all about control and oppression.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't started.
Is not the goal.
No, they haven't started instituting this shit hardcore yet. But I mean, you can see that playbook, that article that I read from 1997 could have been printed today, and you never would have known the difference. This has been going on, and I'm lucky in a lot of ways that I was subjected to this as a young kid, because I saw through it right away. I saw, oh, this is fucked. These people are out of their minds. They've never been on a dirt bike. They've never been in nature at all. They've never gone on a hike.
Yep.
They just, it's frustrating to see people, normal people, push this shit, because I really don't think most people have any idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, most people don't. It's just repeating stuff that they think they agree with, or they're told that they're supposed to agree with, and then they regurgitate.
Yeah. I listen to, Alex Jones or these other people. People are waking up. They're seeing what's happening. They're learning what's going on. They're fighting back against the globalists. And I don't see that. Like, I don't see it at all. I rent a room to an 18-year-old kid, 17-year-old kid, and he just moved out. The guy that just moved out was in his 50s. Neither one of them knew what inflation was. No, I was listening to Alex Jones or something the other night, and this guy comes in, and he's listening to me and he goes, what's inflation? I keep hearing about it. I don't know what it is. And, I didn't know what it was when I was 17 either. But this is the point, is people don't know. And the 50-year-old, he didn't know either. He just, I was at a concert with Steve a couple months ago, and he asked me what a liberal and what a conservative was. This is a lot of the general public have no fucking clue what's going on. They'll tune in every once in a while and hear, oh, Putin's price hike, or Vladimir Putin's aggressive invasion of Ukraine is why you're paying more at the pump. Not the case at all. It's hard to figure this shit out. Oil's like a bathtub. It all goes into a bathtub, and everybody's got your straw, and you pull out. That Russian oil. Really Russian oil is still fucking making it to the market. It's going to India. It's going to China. Yeah. It's still hitting that big pool.
Just a shell game, but that was a really good Alex Jones, by the way.
Nice. People gotta wake up and go. I just pushed it. I should have stopped on that one.
I know, it's still good.
Infowars.com. Well,
oh, fuck. You just got us banned.
Yeah. All right. I think that'll be it for the night. Nolan, where can people find you?
Well, right now you can find me on Instagram at 5150 Nolan. That's all we got at this point in time.
Right on. Right on. That is it for the night. I am that Hard Radio Pod. Come check us out. Peace.